the Putin ruling party in Russia is instituting through the lawmakers in Russia some Trump-inspired legislation. I think that we Americans need to pay attention, close attention, to Russian politics. I know it's very opaque, sometimes it's impossible. We don't hear that much about what happens in the Russian parliament, the Duma. We hear when it turns out that Russian military intelligence has been working with Trump to get Trump elected president of the U.S., and that Russian oligarchs are working with Trump's fucked up son-in-law and two sons to steal, rob, and take what they can, everything that's not nailed down. But we don't hear that much about the laws that are being passed in Russia. And we should. We should be aware of this, because Vladimir Putin is one of Trump's absolute heroes. Absolute heroes. Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping, what's the Chinese premier's name? Xi, I guess. President Xi, the dictator Kim, and the dictator Trump. I'm sorry, the dictator Putin. Of those three, Trump really likes to model himself after Putin. Why? Because Putin is a womanizer. Putin is a billionaire, many times over. Some people say he's the richest man on earth, even beyond Bezos. But of course, that's like Trump's finances. It's very difficult to figure out, if not impossible, to figure out how much Putin is. I'm having trouble keeping him straight. How much Putin has stolen from the people of Russia and salted away someplace in an unmarked account. But Trump loves Putin. He worships Putin. Putin is the kind of man that Trump always wanted to be but never could. Regardless of what else we may think of Putin, he is a strong man in terms of physical strength. He shoots, he rides, he swims, he does gymnastics, he does judo. He does all kinds of shit that require a strong physical body. Trump can barely lift his fucking cheeseburgers. So he looks at Putin as someone he'd like to be, and he knows he never will. So he tries to model himself as much as he can after Putin. That's the reason we should pay attention to Russian politics, domestic politics. Here's another example. Russian lawmakers are now moving to further restrict what passes for freedom of speech in Russia. Keep in mind, freedom of speech in Russia has its limits. If you get to the point where you criticize Putin, then you're going to wind up dead, either poisoned or with radioactive substances or with some kind of toxin or some kind of bacteria, or you're going to be shot down in the hallway to your apartment building. But Putin does not tolerate freedom of speech beyond a very minimal limit. Even rock and roll singers like Pussy, what was it? Pussy, no, not Pussy Galore. That was a Pussy Riot. Too much pussy. You grab 'em by the pussy, Pussy Galore, Pussy Riot. You're a pussy, pussy, pussy. Oh, Christ, where do I live? Even a rock band, although you know it's political in some of its lyrics, as all rock bands should be, or were, even Pussy Riot can wind up in jail for doing shit that in this country would be just ignored or laughed at or otherwise not made a big deal about up to this point. So now, what the Duma, under the firm direction of this sick fucker Putin, what they've done, they're introducing bills, or they passed bills last Thursday. These were passed. These now are law. That would introduce jail terms and fines for insulting the government online or spreading what Putin decides is fake news. Now think about that for a second. In this country, Trump decides what's fake news. And then all his little minions, his little scum-sucking followers pick up on that and immediately label it as fake news and get on their Twitter feeds and their Instagram feeds and spread it all over. Trump wants to be Putin. So the Russian government has now passed bills that jail terms and fines if you insult Putin or the Russian government. What constitutes insulting Putin? Calling him a liar, a cheat, an oligarch, a fascist, a hypocrite, a thug, all of the above? What constitutes insulting Trump? Looking at him the wrong way? These new laws are seen as an effort to preempt and control public criticism of what is developing into Russia's prolonged economic stagnation. I mean, it already is, but it's getting worse and worse. And it's pushing down the government, the Russian government's approval ratings. This is a these new laws reflect a nearly 20-year-long project by Putin to put the flow of information under state control completely. A push that's been made very, very difficult in all these countries that want to be dictatorships like this one. It's become extremely difficult by the growth of the internet. It's very difficult unless you're Kim Jong-un. Then you can control the internet totally. Anyone caught using a variation of the internet not approved by the North Korean government will be very simply shot, and all the relatives shot, and all the friends shot. So everybody knows what happens if a North Korean citizen happens to have access to an unapproved version of the internet. They die, their mom dies, their children die, their husband dies, their grandmothers die, their grandparents, their cousins, their nieces and nephews. They are all taken to a compound, and there are many of them in North Korea, where they are executed as a group, just machine gunned, the way the Nazis used to do to the Jews. Okay. Now, the latest of these measures to pass, restricting speech, are awaiting Putin's signature. And of course, Putin has made it clear that not only does he support this kind of legislation, but he is going to sign these bills into law. One set of bills passed by the lower house, the Duma, would subject private individuals, just a person, to fines of up to $3,000 and 15 days under arrest for insulting the government online. Individuals would face fines of up to $6,000 for posting what Putin would decide is fake news. Now, Trump will tell you that just about everything, unless it comes from his pie hole in this country, is fake news. Another bill passed by the parliament in Russia would demand that news media outlets remove any information that shows what Putin decides is clear disrespect to the Russian society, to the state, to its symbols, to the Russian Constitution, or to the government. Anything that shows, and what constitutes clear disrespect? A line in a rock song? A demonstration that is video recorded and put online? Calling Putin a fucking fascist prick just like Trump? I mean, what constitutes clear disrespect? It truly is a matter of interpretation, yes? Further, internet service providers and website owners would have 1 day to remove anything that shows up on their server or on their website. You've got 24 hours to get it the fuck off, or your site will be completely blocked. Nobody can get to it, not even you, even if you own the website. Gone. Now, Russian lawmakers also, this is where New York Times, they also passed a bill that would force websites to immediately remove any so-called false, publicly important information, end quote, that a government watchdog appointed by Putin says is a threat to public order. Like, for example, in this country, it would be, we have to stop eliminating people from the voting rolls through the cross-check system. Now, under the rules passed by the Russian parliament, if we had that rule in this country, what I just said would make the person saying it responsible for going to, you'd go to jail in this country for saying, removing people from the rolls because they have a middle initial in their former registration in Oklahoma, and now that they've moved to Georgia, they registered and left out their middle initial. They don't get to vote. If you complain about that, if that law was in effect here, then, and you complained about it online, then immediately you lose your privileges to go online ever again. Trump loves his shit. Trump is looking at this going, fuck, why can't I do that? Where's my Roy Cohn, right? Now, the measures passed by the Russian parliament, and this is key, did not stipulate clearly what would be considered fake news. Well, I can answer that. Anything that Putin doesn't like, anything that Trump doesn't like is immediately labeled fake news. Come on, this is not hard shit. This is how totalitarianism, this is how Big Brotherism, this is how dictatorships take root. So you don't have to clearly stipulate what would be considered fake news. Go back and read Orwell's 1984. Fake news is whatever Big Brother says it is, although Orwell didn't use that term. But the truth is only what Big Brother says is the truth, or what Putin says is the truth, or what Trump says is the truth, or Kim, or Xi, or any fucking dictator. The authors of these bills, Russian stooges that are trying to suck up to Putin, said in interviews that this would be determined, what's fake news, would be determined by state prosecutors and the new government communications watchdog. How does that sound? Is that comfortable? Critics said that the measures were loosely defined to allow the government to block any information online that it finds undesirable. Altogether now. Duh! No shit! That's what the whole purpose is. You don't need an academic to explain this to you, do you? Vladimir Rizkov, an opposition politician, said on Facebook, look for Rizkov to soon be disappeared. He said, quote, with the bill's wording as vague as possible, it will create possibilities for the widest possible arbitrariness for law enforcement. As a result, he goes on, the society's trust in the government will fall down and the public atmosphere will be poisoned. That's what Vladimir Rizkov said online. Goodbye, Vladimir. I never met you, but I had a chance to read one of your quotes. You're probably gone by now. If not, you soon will be. So as more Russians switch from television, which is already controlled by the Russian government, they switch from television to the internet as their main source of information. Putin and his bully boys have made keeping the web under their control their absolute priority. That is objective number one. You've got to control the flow of information. What did Orwell say in 1984? He who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future. Is that what the line was? I think that's what it was. Close enough. So in February last month, lawmakers proposed creating the infrastructure to separate Russia from the global internet altogether, just like in North Korea. This is what Trump wants. Last year, the Russian state banned a popular messaging app called Telegram. I guess it's similar to, I don't know what, Instagram. They call it Telegram. Banned. Doesn't exist anymore. Then the article goes on to say the Russian government has opened its assault on so-called fake news, even as the U.S., parts of the U.S., certain people within the U.S. have accused Moscow of engaging in the practice itself, fake news, with all their Facebook postings and Instagram and Twitter and all this shit that Trump is involved in, because this is how Trump got the presidency. For example, they have engaged in this through a disinformation campaign during the 2016 American presidential election. So, once again, the irony or the hypocrisy or whatever you want to call it. Remember, Putin's a Christian. Putin is a Christian. This is how they have begun their campaign on fake news. Anything that the Christian Putin says is fake news becomes fake news. Whatever a big brother says you should hate, you will hate. The new bills were passed as Russia's trust in government agencies, and Mr. Putin in particular, has been steadily declining. For the first time since the annexation of Crimea back in 2014, the number of Russians who say that the country is heading in the wrong direction has surpassed those who say it's not heading in the wrong direction. The finding came in a poll conducted in January by the independent pollster in Russia, I guess, Levada. They'll soon be gone too. And the share of people who approve of Putin's work as president, while still something that Trump would kill his own mother for, it's fallen 20 percentage points since it reached its post-Crimea peak in 2015, when it was 86% approved of Putin. Now it's down to 66%. Like I say, Trump would butcher his own children to have a 66% approval rating. Oh, in a heartbeat. In a fucking heartbeat. Nikolai Uskov, editor of Forbes Russia, yeah, there is one, and a frequent commentator, said that the bills that were passed by the Russian parliament were, quote, the government's weapon against the media, end quote. Now, in this country, Trump labels the media the enemy of the people. The enemy of the people, borrowing a Stalinesque term, the enemy of the people. How close do you think? Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, Malloy, calm down. That could never happen in this country. No? Why not? Because you don't think it could happen in this country? That's like what the Reverend Pastor Niemöller said in Germany. They came for the trade unionists, and I didn't protest because I'm not a trade unionist. Okay, so this kind of shit is going on in Russia. That's Russia. No, that's Russia, U.S., North Korea, China. They're all these countries run by authoritarians would like to put this into effect. What's to stop it in this country? All of our capitalists, what, like Mark Zuckerberg? Give me a fucking break. Jeff Bezos? Give me a fucking break. With enough money involved, these people that I just mentioned, they would sell their own parents right into slavery. Yes, they would. This is a capitalist society. They don't give a fuck about niceties like human rights. They're above that. They live, the billionaires in this country live way above what you and I experience on a daily basis. Nikolai Uskov said, quote, the government, Russian government, is clearly getting ready with the idea that protest moods will grow and that this, what they're passing into law, will be reflected, or I mean the growing unrest will be reflected in publications and social networks and by the media. He said, I don't think these laws that are passed will save the state because the wave of anger will sweep away all restrictions. Well, okay. You certainly, Mr. Uskov, you know the Russians far better than I. As a matter of fact, I don't know the Russians at all. I really don't. Neither do you, unless you're Russian, unless you travel there. But Uskov knows the Russians. And when he says, now this shit's not going to come into effect because public anger will wash all these restrictions away, I would disagree with you respectfully, Mr. Uskov. Like I said, I don't know from nothing about Russians, but I do know the power of a dictator. You know, in my lifetime, I've seen what can happen. I've seen the results of dictatorial power. Tens upon tens upon tens of millions of people slaughtered worldwide because of dictatorial power run amok. And not because the people resisted, but because the power of the state and the military were applied against people. Tens of millions of people slaughtered. Just thought you might like to know what Trump's role model, Vladimir Putin, is pushing through the Russian parliament. These are bills that are now laws that Trump would love to have. Are you kidding me? Trump only wants to be a dictator. He only wants to be the head cheese. What I say goes. If anybody disagrees, fuck them. If fuck them doesn't work, then kill them. Just get them the fuck out of my way. I am Donald Trump. I say what goes. I'm smarter than the generals. I know all the good words. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best grades in very difficult colleges to get into. All of that is lies and bullshit. But that's Trump. That's Trump. Oh, God. Don't you get tired of hearing about Trump? I know I do. I would be so glad when this miserable piece of shit is just gone, and I don't care where he goes after fucking over the country. I really don't care. He can go spend his money. He can go rot someplace with some hideous disease. I don't care. I just want him gone. How about you? You just want him gone too? Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.